complex one to even start a project like this, just because of the island, cabling system, stream flow coming through it. So if we're going to do a standard lake, yeah, you could see, if you want to go back, basically the size of the bags, that's the tall one is full of water. That'll draw down, dewater overnight typically. And most of them have about 3 feet of sediment throughout the whole thing right now. But as we move to other lakes where we just set up a simple cable system, we could complete a lot more projects, which is what this is all about too. Moving on from Canyon Lake and then projects throughout western South Dakota. So appreciate what you guys have done for the funding and moving this project along.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, back on the 8th, or was it June 8th when you started looking at these again? Or was it the 18th, I guess it was?
Of this year?
Yeah, this year.
It was May, mid-May, May 18th, right in there.
I wanted to know if it was you that was out there in your hip waders trying to catch the boat that was flowing in the 20-mile-an-hour.
Oh, did you see that? No, that was one of the seasonals.
If you want some additional pictures.
No, we'll take them all. You
I
know,
didn't realize that it came only up to here, so was it one of the other team members that were out there working on the bags, and the boat was just slowly cruising out?
Yep, I was there that day. That was one of my seasonals. I told him to tie it up on shoreline, and he didn't. So.
Well, he walked all the way across to that spot.
Yep, and that was the inlet area. And really, when you look at that first third of the lake that we've done, really there's not a lot of material in there. I mean, we took probably a foot off of that surface, but I mean, it's rock. I mean, even when we're going now, I mean, there's the natural channel running through there. It's not all sediment. I mean, there's rock and material, Goodyear tires, you name it. I mean, there's,
I just wanted to thank him for, you know, he could have walked over on the bridge where I was taking pictures from.
I didn't realize you were out there that day. No, I'll take those photos. Those are good for future, sure.
Any more questions, Nathan?
Why is the dewatered material going to the cement plant?
Well, we needed a cost-effective way to handle that material, and that's a close location to haul it to. And they need it for reclamation purposes. So,
are they doing the hauling for free of charge for reclamation purposes, or no?
No. We needed a place to put that much material, and we could open it up to, you know, a pickup load at a time, but it's not really practical. Yeah.
So is this material something that would be good for gardens? I mean,
oh yeah, it'd be excellent for gardens.
Okay, so can't we just open it up to people to, I mean, how much coordination would that take? You know,
a lot of people are pigs.
Yeah, I mean, it would take, if you have an idea to move that to a location where people can come and get it, but I mean, we can't be there, you know, with a bobcat loading a pickup one at a time for 12,000 cubic yards of material. So, like I said, I mean, the cement plant has offered to just open some of it up to the public, which is fine. I mean, so, you know, we had a close location to move that material to, which is not easy to find. I mean, right in Rapid City. Plus, they will offer it to the public most likely as well too, which is a good deal for everybody.
How are we going to notify the public of that?
Well, I'll discuss it with them, but I mean, that was their idea. They were going to leave it in the parking lot and, you know, at a certain location, and we will make a news release on that.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you working with Galen Hochstrad at USGS?
Yeah, I've talked to Galen. You know, we're trying to coordinate the plans, and his work, you know, future sampling was after we were done sampling. You know, if we started in March like we had planned to, we'd probably be done in August, but it's probably going to be October. I mean, really, by the time we finish. It all depends on really how quick the next cycle goes, which things are going quicker, you know, as we go. So.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
I haven't been down there for a while, but I know there was some concern last year about, is this going to start smelling bad? And have there been objectionable odors?
No, we really haven't had a single complaint. I know Mike Derby has concerns. You know, they have events going on, and you know, with COVID and everything, a lot of those things have canceled this year, which has worked. I mean, the bags are in the front. They're on city land, but, you know, he has events planned and runs that facility, so it's actually worked well this year. But as far as the odor, it's been very minimal, you know, very well contained. Like I said, I wish some of those videos worked because it showed kind of our, you know, our plans that we had in place, plastic lining the banks to prevent erosion, silt socks and everything to, you know, so we end up with clean water, you know, ending up back in the lake. So, but yeah, I mean, learning experiences from last fall to this fall. Yeah, that is working. Okay.
I see there's a star by probably the videos.
Yeah, and that should wrap around, showing the pipe work basically, which ends up going back on the shoreline, and then there's, you can kind of see the plastic in front of the bags, and there's some closer up views of that too in some of the other videos. Yeah, let's go down one more there. There we go. That's really on the back side in front of the chop house, but
Those bags are pretty impressive.
They
especially
sure
when they're
are.
full of water.
oh, it's amazing, and they really have to be on flat ground. That's why we have some of them staked up. I mean, what appears flat, those bags want to roll, you know, until you get material in them. So, you know, if we're dredging the lake, I don't really want to roll a bag of material right back into it. So that's not a very good video right there. Meant to edit some of those. So, and actually, I had some other presentations, but this one was from today. Actually, that's why I included it, but I didn't have enough time to get back and modify the videos. But as we go, so I'll keep giving you guys updates, kind of where we're at, and
Maybe in October.
not till October, huh? Hopefully we're done by October. That'd be my goal.
So we have a meeting in August, and then our next one's in October.
Yep. But even in August, I could
Oh, okay.
update you there too. So. But
All right.
any other
Well,
questions?
thanks for coming and giving us an update. Appreciate it. Looks like it's going
Thank you.
well.
Thank you.
Okay, item 10. Holly Telford is here to update us on her situation with the septic tank. It's been 1 year ago today that we approved this $5,000, and we've had some discussions. You weren't here, but we just need to find out where you're at and go from there.
At our last meeting, we discussed.
Oh, can you come up here? Identify yourself for the record.
Okay.
Thank you.
Holly Telford. At our last meeting, we had discussed that the original bid, the guy that won the original bid got upset because he wanted at half what the top bid was. And they had colluded together, and so he decided he didn't want to do the project for the amount he won the bid for. So, and he was a Hill City commissioner, and he went to the county building department, and he got them to back him up, basically. Well, is it Director Bialotta or just?
Yes.
Okay. Director Bialotta had recommended at the last meeting that, and I told you that it looked like it was going to go into litigation, because he'd already been paid $2,500. With your part of the grant, I only had $2,000 to pay for him, and I'd already paid for part of the prep work that was to go into it. And as I told you, I paid for this tank, a huge tank, because the house is a 6-bedroom, potentially 2 garbage disposal home that's basically sliding down the hill. And so I sent the pictures of the graph showing that it's off balance and sliding down the hill. Well, by state code, the amount of the minimum size of that tank has to be 2,500 gallons. The tank, as you recall, was fractured. It's only a 1,000-gallon tank. So it violates state code, along with the fact that it's fractured, and every time it rains, all the crap comes into the house, and so on and so forth. It goes to the county, and if you'll recall, it got passed by the state. to put in a much larger septic tank, which I bought. We've already paid for all of that. And in accordance with state code, we actually got a tank that was larger than what was required because I wanted to make sure we never got slush back into the house. Well, after that, and we had this county meeting, which I recorded, he flat out told me he was not going to install the septic system as he had agreed to do. And the neighbor, in the meantime, had posted a spike fence. And he used that as part of the excuse at the meeting. Well, after that, I get a call from the state's attorney's office telling me not to contact the county department anymore to get this thing running. And then Director Bialotta at the last hearing recommended that I go to Art Asplin. I did. And he got his son on it, Matt. And that was in December, and Matt agreed to get the system installed within a week of me contacting him after you had recommended that I go with him, as opposed to getting this guy, suing this guy because you felt, and which was probably accurate because now the county won't give me his malpractice policy, that he would do a bad job. So Matt Asplin goes to the county. And I told him that everything was paid for. He would just need to sign a new certificate or permit. Goes to the county, and when he goes to the county tells him that the perk hole was never passed, which was a lie, because they sent me the perk hole test when the guy was supposed to. When the guy was supposed to have start the project last August. Then they proceeded to tell Matt that the plan was never approved by the state. That was another lie because I submitted the actual state approval at one of the meetings here, and I gave Matt a copy of that. So Matt goes back, and they tell him, well, we're not approving it now. We want her to build a mound system, which is 4 times more money. We don't want her to use the tank she's already bought. We want her to use the existing tank, which violates state law because it's a third of the mandatory size it's required to be. And if you call us anymore, we're going to get the state's attorney's office after you. So they blackballed Matt from doing the job. Just to make sure that they were blackballing Matt from completing the job, I sent one other contractor up there, got the same response. So they're not going to let anybody touch this work unless it's done the exact way they want it done, which, by the way, the position of the county is only to make sure that an installation is correct, not direct how the installation is going to be done. That's what the state plan was, and it was already approved. So after that, they got the water department to go over there and shut off the water, to run us off the property. So we have no water. We have to fill up jugs of water to go up to the house, and we use the VA department to take showers and wash clothes. So we have no water to the place either. And it absolutely stinks in there. So, and we don't have, I told you at the beginning that my sister had an apartment in Wyoming. That's no longer the case. She's living there on the top floor. We're secluded in 2 rooms. The rest of the house is shut off. And we go into the kitchen when we need to use it to wash dishes, because that's what we use the water for, but that's where we're at. So it looks like it's going to end up being a massive lawsuit. I cannot use the $5,000 at the present time because they're blocking it.
That's kind of what we wanted. I think we as a board needed to know that because we've had this $5,000 project.
Yeah, I know that, and I really appreciate the fact that the board has contributed that bond, but I can't. I've got everybody fighting me on this now, and apparently trying to run us off the property because they think if they get us to abandon the property, it's going to make the problem go away.
Well, from our position, this is I'm talking, but I kind of feel like what you need to do is get all this figured out, and when you're ready, maybe come back.
Yeah.
And because we're carrying it on the books right now, and
yes.
We've had board members ask about it several times.
Yes.
Would that be acceptable if we say, okay, we're going to rescind the $5,000 now, and then if you get in a position where your project would go forward?
And I want to make very clear that I really appreciate the board offering that because we were in a position we really needed it, and we are even a more dire position now. here's another thing you might find comical. Not only did they get the state's attorneys on this, but the Department of Equalization, the director went out there and allegedly did an appraisal on the property because he wanted to get the tax value on that property equivalent to the other properties, even though that one has mold in it, doesn't have a working system. You have to get a variance in order to build onto the property because it's, and part of the property, which is designated a third of an acre, at least a third of that third is the keyhole drive that everybody uses. So it's like really small, so you have to have a state variance where to put that septic tank. And so the state director, when he's arguing the equalization issues, instead of arguing issues with respect to obsolescence factors attaching to that property, which of course bring the taxes way down, he wanted to do the market assessed value of the neighboring properties that sold at the same value. And then when I raised the issue with the septic tank violating state statute, because he wanted us to keep the same septic tank in there and just repair it, I said, the septic tank, even if you were to do that, it violates state law. And so he comes up with this argument and says, well, it's grandfathered in there. And I started laughing. I said, you do realize that grandfathering, the defense of grandfathering, goes towards the property owner, has nothing to do with state violations. And then it went silent. But that's what he argued to the commission.
So I think.
But yes, I would. I completely understand that you would need to rescind that, and then when I get this all resolved, and it's probably going to go to litigation to get it resolved, then I'll come back and make another petition for the board. But I don't see any other avenue that I haven't tried to exercise at this point.
Well, I appreciate you coming and giving us an update. So,
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair,
yes.
is this Pennington County planning?
Yes, building and planning. TJ and Brittany Molitar is the one who obstructed it, and she got a hold of the state's attorney, and the state's attorney called me and told her not to be contacting her anymore. And then the director of equalization, Shane Rittberger, backed them up and said we don't need to get a new tank, we can just use the old tank after we've already bought a larger size tank that's required by state law. So, yeah, it's them that's holding it up.
Mr. Chair, can I move that we hold this for 30 days, give me a chance to go down to planning, talk to the horse's mouth?
Well, I don't know if we need a motion. I mean, if the board is okay with that, we can take it up at the next meeting.
Yeah, one meeting. I'll either square it up, or I'll tell you it's not squared up.
Is if anybody from the board have the objection to waiting 30 days until our next August meeting?
I do.
You do?
Yeah, and that's not to take anything away from James here, but I think your plan is a good plan. In 30 days, if things are squared away, then we can always come back and reapprove it.
That's a good point.
So I think we deal with what's in front of us right now. If things get squared away 30 days or, at our next meeting, then if Ms. Tilford wants to come back, then we can readdress it at that time.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy for Director Bialotta to go down and talk to them because this is absolutely outrageous.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to rescind the $5,000 that was promised previously to Holly Tilford. Rescind $5,000 from Holly Tilford, and if things come back where she can use the money, she can repetition under the septic tank fund.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Linda. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the discussion?
I just have a question.
Okay.
Other than the fact that it's on the books and Dan has to type in $5,000 when we have a report,
Pardon me?
well, other than it's on the books and Dan has to carry it as a pending expense,
Nobody's
I
been
guess
paid
I'm
up.
not sure why the need to rescind it really is very dramatic.
I think it's just been the time, it's been a whole year, and
I understand that. You know,
My-
we told her
my-
we're gonna help her, we told her we'd help her again, she comes right back, so I guess I don't see the point.
My argument would be is depending on what the bid is, bid could change, you know, by things working out, she may win something and be able to, you know, pay for it due to the court costs or however the legal shakes out.
The only
Therefore-
problem with that, and that's what Director Bjork or Jovic raised initially, once you go into litigation, it takes years. Years. Nothing is done fast. And I'm really in favor of Director Bialotta's, because he may have some influence with that department, because there's just no excuse for what has gone on here other than official abuse. So if the board would be willing to allow Mr. Bialotta to talk to them, and I would come back here in 30 days, and then if he wasn't able to get anywhere, that we do act on rescinding. But the potential of litigation is not a resolution, because that takes years. And we're smelling this stench every day.
yeah. Dan?
I don't think it's appropriate that West Dakota work on any sort of official basis, you know, in this matter with planning and zoning. You know, planning and this is between, you know, Holly and Marty, and planning and zoning. Our only dog in the fight is the 5,000. So it's, I think, most appropriate that we not play any role with planning and zoning. I also tend to agree with Mr. Coath. I don't know that there's a hurry, other than it sounds like we are in a litigation. It's most likely going to be resolved through litigation, and perhaps it is
I can't
best
argue
to
that.
rescind.
Which one of you two first? James?
Number one, she's a constituent. These are one of the stakeholders you so aptly discuss all the time about who we should ask to represent. Second, sometimes there can just be a meeting of the minds, a third voice outside the loop with a calmer head, some kinds. Find a resolution that two heads couldn't see before because they were just butting heads. There's nothing preventing any board member on this board speaking to another government agency to help the constituent that isn't lining their pockets.
Well, I don't see any more discussion, so the motion is to rescind $5,000.
Could I get the wording on that motion? I think
Oh.
Director Bennett, if I got it right, just tell me.
Yeah, that looks good. I support it if the second supports it.
Okay. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign.
Nay.
Aye. No,
Okay, there's 2 noes, James and Ron.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, thanks for coming and giving us an update, and good luck with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're thinking about you.
Thank you. You don't mind if I leave, right?
Ron, cool. All right, that moves us to number 11, Banner Stakeholder Report, next steps for Missouri River Water. Bob, you want to introduce?
Well, thank you, Dr. Chapman, for coming in and giving us the stakeholder report. We had, was it 1 or 2 meetings online? They were also very useful, so I want to thank you for those. And read through the entire report, and I'll let you share that with the group.
All right. Thank you, Director Williams. And again, thank you to the entire board for your support in working on this project, a very exciting project. And as we get started, I'd like to introduce a colleague of mine, Zach Darling, employee at Banner, graduated from South Dakota School of Mines and Technology in 2019. And he and Joe Munson and Jared Larson have been part of the internal Banner project team working on this, and we're very thankful to work with the subcommittee that consisted of the executive director, Dan Mullally, Director Williams, Director Noctegal, and Director Jovic. And so to bring you up to date, you may recall the scope of the work that you have us under contract for is to do really two things right now. One is to do the scan of potential stakeholders in western South Dakota, which resulted in the stakeholder report. The second part then is to convene and facilitate meetings with those potential participants in a water project over the course of the late summer and fall, and work toward, if there's agreement among the stakeholders, work toward a charter for a new group to further look into what a project might be to bring Missouri River water west of the river and that sort of thing. And so we're partway through with the stakeholder report. As we're getting started too, I believe there's a one-page addendum that corrects the water usage for the city of Rapid City, found on page 20, to over 8 million gallons per day. So wanted to bring that to your attention as well. I'll just give highlights of the methodology that we've used so far in getting underway with the project. And the first was to develop essentially the talking points and questionnaires that we wanted to use when we called those West River stakeholders, who consisted of water districts and communities predominantly, and some tribes. And in doing so, we talked about the results of the report that was done for you by the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. We let people know that they were one of several interviews that we conducted across western South Dakota. That in talking about meeting this fall and talking about a potential organization, there was no commitment coming into it that they had to join that organization ultimately, or that they had to purchase water, but rather just come together to have that discussion. And that we would have those meetings conducted and decisions made by consensus, that we would seek to build a consensus on how to move forward. As we talked to a number of folks, and those of us on the internal team made those calls, we talked quite openly with the various technical directors of those organizations. And in doing so, we had some good comments because they did not meet with their elected bodies or board of directors. There's not official positions, if you will, but good comments ranging from, I've got quite a bit of good water, but I'm willing to participate, all the way to, I could use some water right now. And so a lot of interest, interest in coming together and learning more. There were a couple of entities and who had relatively new systems and said they were not interested at this time, but we are thinking that we'll want to keep them in the loop in case they change their mind at any time. Overall, there was a good consensus, and we have recommended that we continue to that next step of convening those meetings and continuing to explore a new organization. Those next meetings would start right away. Our goal, as you might recall, is to try and have that charter by the end of the calendar year, which is moving right along. And so on pages 5 and 6 in your report, we're looking at dates which are essentially the second Thursday of every month, August through November, to have those meetings. The very first meeting that we would have would be in large part informational. As we talked to the different stakeholders, we got ideas of people who either were involved with rural water in South Dakota or DNR in particular to be speakers. And so I wanted to come and report to you tonight, and as we move forward, extend the invitation to individuals in those organizations to be part of that introductory meeting. Once we have a chance to get some good background on what does it mean to be a new water district or some other entity, then we would begin to really talk about how we would work together in those subsequent meetings, with the idea that the last meeting would be in November of this year. Our goal would be to propose some ground rules to that group when they first meet. Ideas of respecting each other's opinions, including ideas, transparency in the discussions, and making those decisions on how to move forward by consensus. And then as we have those meetings, obviously we will be preparing the materials for those meetings, coordinating with the individuals and all the logistics, as well as doing the notes and minutes of each of those meetings. We also believe that as this builds, interest will continue to grow, and stakeholders other than the ones that were contacted here may be interested in getting involved. And we would highly recommend that to allow that openness in the year 2020. And also, to the extent that there are people interested in participating, I would like to extend, whenever these the logistics are set for these, to all of you to be part of those meetings if you choose. And then other entities might be potential funders like USDA Rural Development, to be able to sit in and understand what the group is working on as well. And so with that, our plan, we would like to continue to work with the subcommittee and making plans for the upcoming meetings and continue to proceed as proposed. Any questions?
Where would those meetings be held? Would it be in one spot or would it be several spots?
Well, that's a great question. And, you know, with everything going on, we're trying to kind of figure that out. I think we are thinking right now it could be a combination of Zoom meetings perhaps, but obviously, at least for the final adoption, we would like to have everybody be able to meet in person and that sort of thing. So, yes.
Cheryl, I had a question. So you mentioned that there were entities that at this time weren't interested. I know you guys were the spearhead in putting together the Lewis and Clark system in the East River. Were there entities involved in that system that originally didn't want to be part of the system and then later changed their mind?
That happened, yes, it did. I couldn't tell you which communities those were, but that's not uncommon at all, that people initially think it might not be quite the right thing, but then once they see things come together, may change their minds on all of that. Yes.
I was wondering if some communities, such as New Underwood and Wasta, were contacted because they're not on your list.
Well, they are still to be contacted, and just the individuals were not available and that sort of thing, so, yeah.
Yeah, I wondered if
Yeah.
you were looking at them, and another one was the Hermosa Water Users District.
Mm-hmm.
And then will you also be talking to some of the smaller housing developments down the road farther?
Yeah, I think that is a question, frankly, we're grappling with, because as you can imagine, I think if you put up a map and you know how many individual subdivisions there are that have needs like this, what is the most efficient way to really look at that? Should we start addressing that at a county level, for those smaller subdivisions? And so those are some of the questions that, frankly, we would like to bring up and have discussions with at those meetings as well. Because without a doubt, there's needs, but, if you live in a relatively small subdivision without the help of your county or something like that, how do you get a chance to really plug into that, So I think this raises some really good questions, about how to help everyone have access to clean water and that sort of
may be
thing.
more appropriate for those smaller ones to look at them down the road when and if something's
Right.
come their way.
Right.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Mhm. Yes.
I was just noticing that on your map on, was it page 15, that you have very small towns and so forth, like Gilbert, New Prussia, Kennebec, and all places I've gone in the country. But I noticed up in the text on the second line, it talks about Draper, Interior, Quinn, Reliance, and it should be Vivian.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. All right. And I think there might have been a question, Lyman Jones gets their water from Minnewachuny as well, so on there. Yes.
When you're talking to these groups, is it assumed that the solution is going to be a pipe solution? I mean, there might be other solutions out there, like, there's so much water that we're talking about here that this could potentially be maybe a new reservoir located someplace, or, who knows what could be possible here. But
Right. Well, and I think that kind of gets us into that next phase, if you will, that whenever the group decides to form and then starts really looking at the specifics of how do you do that. But I would say that, not that, that there are other options, and, good engineering solutions oftentimes require a number of alternatives to really look at and get a good comparison of benefits versus drawbacks of any particular proposal.
Yeah.
Cheryl, you mentioned consensus and meetings, and I'm wondering, when do the meetings get to be a more formal role, or you can have votes and a chair and vice chair, that type of thing?
Well, and I think that we can take a look at that for sure starting in 2021. And I think we're hoping to have a relatively short time to form the charter. And I would anticipate that after that first meeting in August, that there be some kind of a steering committee or working group who could work directly with us, on language for a charter and things like that. We would request that and ask for involvement that way in getting started. So, but being able to make decisions together in consensus, I think is an important foundation for a new organization, so that we feel like we're stepping forward kind of in sync with each other as we move forward on that. So.
Yeah, one more question. I don't want to jump ahead too far on. We don't really know for sure a lot of these things, but thinking about the role of our water rights in this district, how we would interact with this organization. East Dakota Water Development District has water rights. Is that the way they do that? Is that something we can use to decide the legal ramifications and things like that, contractual things, for example?
Well, and I think there's a number of ways to look at that, and that will be the charge of the new group to really take a look at how to manage those and those various water rights that are in place right now. So, all right.
Thank you for coming.
I'll continue to be back to update you as
Okay.
we move forward. And thank
Very
you
good.
again.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Cheryl.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah. We'll take a break after item number 13. Yeah, after the garage. So anyway, we're on item 12, funding request for $15,600 for USGS for operation and maintenance of 2 stream gauges that we are funding currently. I asked the USGS to get this contract to us because we've been approving this contract well past the completion of there's always a gap in there, so that's why I have it front, because this existing funding contract we have expires the end of September. So you've got a proposal there. Basically, I've seen this one before. It's the same dollar amount as we funded for this year, $15,600. And I would make a motion that we approve the agreement with USGS for the 2021 calendar year. Is there a second? Seconded by Ron. Discussion. We do have a representative here from the USGS, and he did hand out if anybody has any questions.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would move against this, not because it's for anything other than UCGS negotiated in bad faith, not informing us that a board member was employed analyzing this data. And some of those funds that we paid from the board directly benefit their salary.
Any other discussion? Nathan?
I've got a question for the USGS representative. Has the USGS changed its stance on accepting data from outside sources to be posted on its website for public consumption?
The U.S. David Bender with the U.S. Geological Survey. No, our database is USGS data. We do have a process where we can put data from outside, but it's pretty strenuous and not cost effective for us to go through the process to incorporate outside data into our USGS database.
Is it not a public database?
It is a public database, but it's rigorous, and there are requirements that we have to meet, scientific requirements for that data to be placed in their database.
So this seems kind of odd because I'm familiar with GIS workings, and I know one particular GIS operation, they're able to take data from all kinds of sources and they just tag them differently. So this came from this source, this came from this source, and then they can incorporate that as they wish into whatever they're trying to produce, but basically the data is there.
Yes.
So why can't the USGS do something like that on a public site with public dollars?
Well, EPA does that. We'll take everybody's data and put it in their national databases. We like to have control of our data from the USGS.
Okay, but you're taking, I mean, this was a subject of discussion that we had before. That if we had, let's say, the state of South Dakota decided that they wanted to do these gauging stations themselves, you guys wouldn't take the data because of because you want to have control of the system. I mean, to me, that doesn't make any sense. You're basically blocking other people from providing data that could be used by others. Why do you do that?
I can't answer that myself. But our data has to meet certain scientific requirements to be put
Why
in our
can't you
data.
tag it differently and say, this is USGS data, we have these high standards, this is other data that's available, and you can take it as you wish?
Well, I can't answer that myself.
It should be an open architecture system, and that's not what you got. I mean, basically, you're like a Microsoft out there that's trying to prevent other people from using this system, which to me makes no sense because it's a public system.
It is a public database. Our data, the USGS collects, is a public database, publicly available, so.
Yeah. I don't think that's managed well, and I disagree with the philosophy there. And basically it forces situations like this, you know, where people have to go to the USGS to do their stream gauge if they want that data. I.e., you can't do it yourself because your system won't allow their data to go in there in any form.
Well, they can have their own data set. I mean, they can have their own server.
Right, but it won't be on your site.
No.
Right.
Any other discussion? Rob?
Originally, the stream gauges we defunded, and one of the reasons that I voted in that direction was because at the time of the presentations, they suggested that the stream gauges themselves helped in some way to prevent flooding. Can you tell me, has USGS changed their view of that, or is it still a benefit to know what's coming out of those two aquifers that will prevent rapid city flooding?
I don't think that was the point originally. I think the point was to understand what is coming into the system, into the reservoirs, and into the stream systems. So in some ways, it may help understand the flooding down the line.
Yeah, but for an emergency situation,
No.
they are not used, correct?
Probably not. I mean, they're far enough upstream,
Yeah,
but
got
you got to understand what's coming in, what your base flow is coming into the system, so you understand what those peaks are going to be on the flood.
The thing that really bothered me was that you filled the room with people on one of our boats that believed that it had something to do with preventing floods like the 1972 flood. And I voted against it then. I mean, I've had a chance to use the USGS opportunity, gave me the opportunity to visit each of those two sites and see the maintenance that we're paying for, and to keep those clear. So I appreciate that. The only problem is, without a definitive statement, these are not part of the emergency planning, flooding. I probably would vote against it unless you say yeah.
They probably aren't as critical to the flooding. They're critical to understand the base flow coming into the system.
Okay. I think I understand.
Okay.
Any other questions? Jane?
I think what else is also important, that in the year they were defunded, we asked USGS if anybody requested that data, and the answer was no. Not one entity had requested the data from those two stream gauges.
I mean, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation looks at that data from the site above Castle Creek above Deerfield. They look at that data, I won't say daily, but they do look at that data. Other entities, people look at that. I mean, the fly fishermen look at what's going into Deerfield.
I don't know if you understood me. We were specifically told by the boss that no one requested that data. I'm not asking you.
No.
That is what we were told.
Okay.
No one requested that data.
Well, I can't answer that right now. So.
Any more questions? Yes.
I just have another comment that, we've had a number of things that we've discussed in regard to this. And I don't think USGS does a bad job, but I think, if you were an entrepreneurial company and you were making your living doing this, there would be questions, natural questions that would come up like, how can we do this better? And I don't see that happening here. And that's what I was trying to illuminate earlier with the question about the data. And the other thing is, Director Bialotta did research previously showing that this could be done in a less expensive way through other avenues like the state of Wyoming is doing, but apparently USGS has blocked them from adding that data to their website, so I don't understand why that is. But I'm going to be voting against it, and it's nothing personal against you or USGS or anything suggesting you do a bad job. It's just I don't see that entrepreneurial spirit. I don't see the questions being asked of how can we do this better, how can we be more productive, how can we be more customer focused, and so that's why I'm going to vote against it.
Any more? Seeing none, motion on the floor is to approve the contract for next year's. So, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Nay.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Williams? No. Navigo?
No.
Jovic?
No.
Driscoll?
Yes.
Yerke?
Aye.
Coe?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Bialotta?
No.
Mack?
Aye.
We have 5 yes, 4 no's, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Item 13 is approve the annual renewal of our current office space lease at the garage at $400 a month. Bob, any comments?
I think that is correct, $400 a month for the next year. And motion, I'd like to make the motion that we approve.
Second. Any discussion?
Nope, you won't find a cheaper space in town, including utilities.
You got it, got it, Dan?
Yes.
All right, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break.
Woohoo! Like break.
And then we'll get to you, Jay.
Jay would have probably preferred we take a break after him so he could start making his way east.